Hello everyone and welcome to this new webinar of the series 9 months, 9 universities for the 2025-2026 academic year. My name is Géraldine Lyon. I'm an international project assistant at the University of Lyon 1 and I will be hosting today's talk. Before introducing today's webinar and speaker, I would like to give you a bit of context. The Arcus European University Alliance brings together 9 institutions which share academic, scientific, and cultural objectives, a common vision of the role of higher education and research, and mutual fields of interest. Today's webinar is part of the guest lecture series 9 months, 9 universities, offered in the framework of the Plurilingual and Intercultural Hub. This hub seeks to promote plurilingualism across the 9 institutions by leveraging the language skills of students, researchers, and staff, while also enhancing their intercultural competence, which is an essential soft skills in today's global society. These lectures focus on specific topics related to language and culture and are intended to generate awareness and appreciation for the topic of multilingualism, as well as an understanding of the many areas of our lives that are related to and influenced by language. Let me now introduce today's speaker, Professor Ana Bessa Carvalho. She's an assistant professor in the Department of English and American Studies at the University of Minho, where she completed her PhD in comparative literature and queer studies. She currently serves as Vice Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities. Her research focuses on queer studies, animal studies, and memory studies. Today, Professor Bessa Carvalho will present an accessible introduction to body mapping, drawing on its long-standing use in therapeutic and educational settings to explore its origins, purposes, and practical guidelines. During this talk, Professor Bessa Carvalho will explain how this transcultural practice is used in classrooms and its value, especially for international and multilingual students. She will detail how body mapping is able to transcend borders, languages, and life experiences, and offers an alternative form of expression that is particularly useful when attempting to express one's personal history in a foreign language. This talk will also highlight the importance of creativity and in learning spaces and fosters a meaningful return to material, hands-on practices in an increasingly digital environment. Before giving the screen to Professor Bessa Carvalho, I would like to remind you that you can leave your comments or questions in the comments box, and I will pass them on to Anna at the end of the webinar. Well, Anna, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. The screen is now yours.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you so much for the introduction. And I'll start sharing my PowerPoint, if that's okay. So this will be, as you mentioned and as you explained already, it will be a very short and introduction to body mapping. I've been using it in several contexts. I've used it as a visiting lecturer at the University of Ottawa in Canada. I also use it with my own students here at the University of Minho in some classes. And I've also used it in another context in a creative writing group where the public was quite different from the one of the classroom. So inside and also outside academia. And I found that every single person reacts very nicely to body mapping. And I think that it can be a tool for, well, it's not exactly about multilingualism, but it is in a way, in the sense that it demands other languages besides verbal communication. So I'll use my PowerPoint to guide me so as not to go over time as well. I'll start off with a quote from Billy Ray Belcourt, a First Nations writer. My background's in literature, and I cannot just forget it. And this sets this quote in particular, well, points us in a nice direction of looking at the body and into the body. So they write, "The body riots, and I'm inside it, bearing witness, interpreting, translating, and noting. This body is a myth or a ghost or a horror story or a beast of a burden, depending on who you ask." And I find that this works very nicely with body mapping. This idea that we use our bodies to bear witness, to interpret, to translate, to express ourselves and to feel emotions and to connect as well. So, what is body mapping? Some people might be already familiar with it, others may not. So, body mapping involves tracing around a person's body to create a life-sized outline. And then this outline is then drawn, painted, and written upon. It's a contemplative and creative process that assists the maker in reflecting upon and expressing their personal and embodied life experiences. So, it's actually a very simple thing when it comes to our skills. We don't have to be incredible artists to be able to do this. We've actually done this with our own hands, for instance, when we were children, we'll just like draw around. So a body map is, simply put, this. It's exactly what the name implies. It's a map of our body that then we inscribe with our experiences. So body mapping captures the embodied nature of a person's experiences and meanings to tell a story that depicts social, political, and economic processes. It enables reflexive thought that is unlikely to have been produced in a typical interview or focus group. So, as we'll see further on, body mapping begins in the context of therapy and in the context of group therapy in a way. So, sometimes when we are, especially if we are being interviewed or being asked to talk about ourselves in a different language, there are many barriers here. There's a personal barrier, there's the linguistic barrier. So, body mapping allows us to express ourselves not through spoken language, but through written words and drawings and collage and all these other tools that will allow us to speak differently, but still communicate. So, according to Malchiodi, these strategies focus on body image, not only as an historical record of significant events, but also as a somatic source for exploring self efficacy, capacity, and resilience. Um, our body is the main home that we have, if you want. So, this idea that a return to the body to be able to express ourselves. So, well, if you want, we could talk about body language, for instance. And the idea that by looking at our own bodies, we'll not only be aware of the sites of pain and the sites of and how we experience the world through the body in more negative ways, but also through a positive uh, side, if you want. We can use drawings, words, collage, and other forms to identify pains, strengths, weaknesses, scars, and other marks on the body. Some people develop a sort of a color code when they are doing their body maps. So they can use different colors for different types of marks on the body: red for pain, blue for cuts and bruises, green for illnesses, black for any other problem. Further on, I'll be showing you some images so that this becomes clearer. But it's, well, simply put, it's a way of identifying your body and how it feels and how it aches as well. It's not exactly an individual process, it is a collective process, as we can read from Shirley Gunn's booklet. When drawing the outline of their bodies, participants work in pairs. So we cannot draw ourselves fully, so we work with someone else. And there's a first outline, that it's our body. And then there's a second outline of the partner, so the person who then lies on top of it, which is a participant shadow, which represents people and organizations that have extended loving, caring support during difficult times. This reflective exercise happens every day and assists in disrupting feelings of isolation, loneliness, and abandonment. And I find that, particularly now where we are completely devoted to technology and we are extremely isolated, even though we spend all our day communicating with each other, body mapping can be a very interesting tool to challenge this same isolation that we feel. Although in the classroom we don't have a lot of time, so usually we just make a body map that is shorter and it doesn't exactly demand someone else's participation on it. Body maps are a collective experience as well, and that's why I find them particularly interesting and productive because of that articulation with each other that we are definitely lacking today. So body maps have a very particular origin that we must acknowledge. So in 2002, the Bambanani Women's Group was one of the first and also main um, um, groups that actually developed this technique. So it was done with 10 women who were living with HIV in Cape Town in South Africa. And at the time, this was developed by the artist Jane Solomon. She was one of the first person to actually use body mapping. And then this became, along with the clinical psychologists, Jonathan Morgan, the Memory Box Project. So these 10 women were asked to do a body map as a way to record their stories in a first stage with this idea that it will be the testimony of a lifetime that they will leave behind. But then it became a sort of a site of resilience as well, because they went from thinking of HIV/AIDS as a life sentence and then as just a chronic illness due to medication and all that. So the intention, as I'm reading there, was to document the lives and hopes that receiving treatment brought to the women. There's a particular local implication of this use of the body map that I must mention, because at the time of the first body mapping session, 600 people were dying of HIV/AIDS each day in South Africa, and in parts of the country, 25% of women were testing positive. So it was a social, cultural, and economic emergency. And the body mapping appears here as a response and as a way for these women to narrate their experience and to also do this communal thing of sharing their personal experience. And it was to give shape to a taboo through the intersection between personal narrative, medicine, and art. And also a way of, in a way, escaping the authoritative voices of medicine, for instance. So instead of just having this medical discourse narrating the effects of HIV and the medication on the body, we have these women actually putting it on paper, literally. So this is where body mapping has its first occurrence, if you want. So in this very particular context, and as I'll show you in a bit, it has now been used in many different contexts for many different reasons. So there are many benefits to body mapping. It engages people in a therapeutic storytelling of their problems and anxieties, but also their moments of happiness and community building, in which they turn inwards towards their own bodies, the center of all human experience, and every feeling manifests itself on the body. Sometimes when speaking to university students, they complain about chest aches or belly aches or back aches, and I actually realized that that comes from either mental instability, but also from things just like not sitting right when we are in class, or from slouching all the time because we're on our phones all the time. So it makes you much more aware of your body, and in all the contexts that you are in, whether the home or a cafe or university or a classroom. So it actually promotes an engagement with our bodies and feelings by making us aware of them while articulating them and putting it to paper. Sometimes in therapy sessions or in group sessions or even in an honest conversation with friends, we tend to overlook the effects of mental illness or anxiety on the body. And body mapping brings that to the forefront. It demands us to look at our bodies and to be aware of our bodies and how we carry them around all the time. One of the other benefits of body mapping is the fact that it gives privilege to marginalized voices over the authorial and official discourses on the body. Of course, that when we're talking about students, they may or may not be from marginalized and less privileged backgrounds, but body mapping does this thing in which everyone is equal while doing their body map, which I also find very interesting. There's no hierarchy between people who are doing the body maps, and every single life experience is valid enough to be in the body map. And also the fact that it can be used by everyone, regardless of gender, ethnicity, age, and class, of course, that provided these individuals can um, use the paper or are able to trace the paper, is also makes BodyMap a very accessible tool. You don't need iPads, you don't need any sort of like avant-garde technology. You just need paper and a couple of pencils. So it actually makes it for a very affordable tool, if you want. Now some applications of the body map. As you can see here, they have been used in several and very different contexts. So the first one in HIV/AIDS medicine and side effects. Then it has been used for musicians to analyze their body posture and chronic pain. I saw one article about how violin players develop certain types of particular pain. When it comes to disability, to grief, domestic violence, teacher training as well. So there was this particular thesis written on music teachers and how they become more comfortable in the classroom, and they actually develop body maps. End-stage disease, the effects of heavy labor on the body as well. For instance, you can give body maps to people who work in a factory and ask them to highlight the chronic pain that they have been developing and to see how the same activity affects the bodies in the same way. For marginalized and socially vulnerable groups, there's a very interesting study on undocumented immigrants in Canada as well. For trauma, mental health, and particularly for youth at risk. Because body mapping involves drawing and involves something that is so playful, it is particularly useful and fruitful with children and teenagers as well. As you can see here, it has also been gaining some academic attention. So it has been perceived as a feminist activity, as a decolonial method as well for intergenerational dialogues. And particularly the idea of visual methodology with vulnerable youth is particularly interesting for us in the sense that it can be actually used as a tool for change and to bring to the forefront marginalized voices and people who are voiceless in a way. And here we can also see the effects of or how it can challenge language barriers in the sense that you actually don't have to speak much to understand the instructions and then write or draw your body map. There's a lot of material online on how to do a body map. So these activities are very democratic in the sense that there's no hierarchy between the person who is asking the body maps to be done and the people who are doing them. But there are instructions. So I usually just give a set of instructions and then the students or the people who are doing it just carry them out. But the instructions are very simple. So even with a very limited knowledge of the language, usually I do them in English, the participants are able to understand the instructions. So there will not be a language barrier here, I would say. And this is actually, according to Solomon, or the creator of the body map, there's several uses of body mapping, according to her. So you have it as a therapeutic tool, a treatment information support tool, a research tool, advocacy tool, intergenerational dialogue, team building, art making, and biographical. And many of these are or can be used in the context of the classroom, for instance, or even outside the classroom, but by support groups that are working with our students, for instance. So one of the most well-known articles written on the body map is this one by Gestaldo, Magalhães, Carrasco, and David. And they write, the purpose of using body mapping in our study was to engage participants in a critical examination of the meaning of their unique experiences, which could not simply be achieved through talking. In this particular case, we're talking about, as you can see from the title of the article, undocumented workers working in Canada. So there was a language barrier there. So they couldn't exactly talk about their experience, either because they didn't have enough knowledge about the language, or actually just from a traumatic experience that made them silent. And actually, these people are in a very vulnerable position, so they want to be heard, but they can't be made visible because they may be expelled from the country. So instead of talking, they would draw symbols and select images that help them tell a story and at the same time challenge them to search for meanings that represented who they had become through the migration process. Body mapping also seemed to be an ethically appropriate method for data generation, given that body maps help maintain anonymity by not exposing the individual, while at the same time making participants visible as full human beings engaged in society by showing their hidden trajectories through art. It's very interesting to see. I did this particular activity in a workshop just last week with foreign students who are in Portugal studying Portuguese. So the instructions were clear. They're on a B2 level of Portuguese, and they could perfectly understood the instructions. And it was very interesting to see how they would react to body map, particularly when it comes to their immigrant status or a status of migration, because they would include many things from home in the body map. They would include a lot of food, for instance. They would draw the map of their country. So I find that foreign students, for instance, will react very nicely to body map because they are in a very different context that forces them to look back at home and to look back at the trip that they have made. So I find that this is a particularly productive tool for people who are experiencing some sort of experience, a sense of exile or a sense of dislocation as well. Then in another article, Jagger and Tucson talk about how visual arts-based methods may be helpful in terms of engaging children and adolescents in research and privileging their perspectives. I've over the last few years, I've been talking to my students a lot about creativity and what they do as hobbies. And I realized that they miss being more creative inside the classroom. They say that university sometimes doesn't allow them to be as creative as they would like. So I also like the idea that we are bringing back creativity in a way to the classroom, either through creative writing, but also through body mapping. And even if they are not very good at drawing, that's not actually the purpose of body mapping. It's just finding a different language to communicate their intimate feelings, if you want. So, similarly, as visual methods rely less on language to communicate than a traditional interview or focus group, they can be used in cases where participants have limited literacy or where there are language barriers between the research team and participants. In both instances, visual arts-based methods have the potential to minimize power imbalances between researcher and participants, thereby producing more culturally and context-sensitive information. And it was very interesting to see in this particular group of foreign students, we had Chinese students, students from Russia and Iraq and Morocco, and everyone got to do their own body map, and they were very different from each other. But they actually, all of them completed the body map. So clearly there's no language barrier, there isn't so it's a very democratic tool in a way. And also because we're not asking to raise their hand and to participate, we're actually just giving them paper and something to draw with. Everyone can engage and everyone will engage very willingly, actually. So ultimately, this is a tool that shifts according to its public, as it is defined by those who create the body map. As you've seen before from the slides that I've shared, it has had many uses and it has been appropriated, if we want, in many contexts. And it's up to the person who is doing the body map to decide how far they want to go as well. This is also about the process, not the end result. Of course, that some body maps are beautiful to look at, and I'll be showing you some, allowing everyone to participate regardless of their skills. Again, you can do it with very affordable materials. And it's unique to the participant, yet communal as well, because everybody lives and experiences the world through their bodies. It recurs to language, symbols, slogans, and demands a creative and plural approach to life writing. It's also a highly personalized manner of life writing, of narrating life experience beyond language barriers and cultural boundaries. It's actually very interesting to see, for instance, how Chinese students will draw a lot of food. So clearly, that is something that is extremely important to them. Whereas other students, for instance, with different religious backgrounds, will have very personal slogans of being independent, for instance. So it's also interesting to analyze how the cultural background influences body mapping and influences the drawing and writing itself. It's also an activity which is in itself embodied in the sense that it demands direct contact with the map and its materials, rather than verbal therapy or other methods that do not contemplate the body. And it's actually a long process. If we want to draw a body map which is life size, we would spend weeks and even months on it, which actually is, I find it very interesting and particularly productive for university students whose attention span is so short that they usually just like something that is quick and fast paced. And this actually allows them to stop for a couple of hours to reflect on themselves, which is something that we're missing a lot from today's life. So this is a map from this article that has shown the geographical location of body mapping articles. As you can see, it's used in South Africa, where it started, in Canada as well, and in Australia and in some parts of Europe, but it's not extremely popular yet, I think. I believe that there will be more research into this theme. And in particular, in the classroom, this is what I came up with because this is what I've seen from the experience I've had. So it develops student self-awareness, both of body and mind. It allows students an engagement with themselves that can improve their learning abilities if they realize that the pain in their stomach comes from being extremely nervous. It allows them to sort of identify the cause of the problem and then try to solve it. It develops self-confidence because they will not only, the body map is not just about trauma or grief, it's also about happy things that have happened to them. So they will look at themselves and see the many things that they've done in life that are bad, but also the good ones. It also somehow tackles anxiety because it makes them look at their past, their present, and future. And particularly when it comes to the future, they can become very anxious and nervous about what they will be doing in the future. They are worried about their masters and their PhDs and their financial status and all that. So by drawing on the map the things that they would like to achieve, it actually makes them self-aware of the barriers that they have developed or that they are actually just imagining and that are not actually there. It also helps them understand the physical effects of what are the main problems of university students. The sleep deprivation, the lack of exercise, bad nutrition, depression, and anxiety. They realize that their back hurts because they are looking at their phones all the time, for instance, or that their breathing is affected by the fact that they're anxious and all that. By using body map, we also do something that I'm very much interested in, which is the return to paper and to other physical materials. Over the last years, students don't actually bring paper into the classroom anymore. They don't actually print out the materials. They read everything on their phones. They bring their laptops and their tablets. And most of the time, they're always looking at us with a screen in front of them. And there are no screens in body mapping. Although technology can be incredible in the classroom, I also think that we're missing out on a lot by just not taking notes with our hands, for instance, by not using our hands in a different way. Um, it also allows them to address experiences that cannot be fully articulated through oral communication. If you ask them how they're feeling, or if you ask them about their past, some of them will be too shy to actually speak in the classroom. So body mapping will allow them to express themselves differently. And also, of course, it allows them to develop creativity, self-reflection, narrative skills, and other so-called soft skills that are often overlooked in educational contexts, just like the creation of empathy or even sharing the body map with the person next to them and just allowing themselves to be vulnerable and to recognize someone else's vulnerability too. These are some results that I've gathered from, well, seeing how students react. So students often feel very uncomfortable at first with the prospect of drawing and being more creative. Um then they also do something which is to look for references of the human body online and also references on how to draw things they like or how to draw a cat or a dog or something, which shows that we are very dependent on the internet and external references, even when talking about ourselves, which can make us ask if we can really draw ourselves or if we know our bodies that well. It's actually very hard to ask someone to draw their body because usually we have a very weird perception of our body and something that may or may not uh, be accurate. Um, so after this first 20 minutes, when students are very much blocked by anxiety and from the inability to think of themselves as the object of the body map, they actually then relax and they went over time because they actually enjoyed it. Some students decide not to share their body maps, which is absolutely fine because the body map is extremely personal, even though it's a collective activity in the sense that everyone is doing the same thing. The body map itself is extremely personal, so they are not forced to share it with anyone. With students who are not Portuguese, it was very interesting to see that they either wanted to sort of like show off and show and write words in Portuguese, but also sometimes there are words that clearly had a different meaning for them, so they use their own mother tongue. So you look at the body maps and you see several languages at the same time. It's also very interesting to see how English is also dominant because a lot of them are Portuguese, but they would use words in English to express themselves, like overwhelmed or something like that, which also shows how we think in several languages. And as I said before, these instructions are very simple and clear to be understood by speakers at early ages of learning the language. So even if you had a A1 class and you would explain the instructions in Portuguese, for instance, or in English, I believe that we would be able to communicate effectively, even by recurring to Google Translate or something like that. But it would be effective. So the language would not be a barrier. Of course, there are some ethical implications. According to Trina Orchard, the technique must be credited and used in a culturally sensitive approach. The cultural, and she writes, the cultural appropriation of body mapping by different researchers and community practitioners and its implications for participants' well-being in the integrity of the methodology. So that's why I started with explaining where it comes from. Also, the fact that the body map belongs to you alone. So it's the person who does the body map that decides what it consists of and if we want to share them or not. Many times I wonder if the classroom is the right place to create a body map, because of time constraints, but also because body map has a certain level of therapeutical implication in a way. So it may not be the best and the most appropriate environment. But what we usually do is that I just ask them, for instance, to look at recent events in their life or to project the future or something like that. Also, I wonder if we can expect people to openly and semi-publicly tackle possible triggering issues like gender expression, scaring, eating disorders, trauma, addiction. Of course, that I always tell them go as deep as you want. And some students will write about very personal things or draw about very personal things, and others will just draw about uh, things like their family or their friends or things they like to eat. So it's also up to the participant to decide how much they want to share. And I like that aspect of body mapping because no one is forced to share something that they don't want. And also, shouldn't we maybe create body maps individually without seeing each other's? Because they maybe, it's just like participating in a class. Often students don't do it because they're afraid of being judged. So I don't force students to share them with anyone. I just give them the instructions, and then they at home can do something bigger and better and broader. But at least they will have the knowledge that this tool exists, and then they actually can include it in their journals, for instance. And also, body maps usually take several sessions to be created. So the body maps that we do in class or in these workshops that I teach are smaller, and of course, they don't probably go into very deep trauma. They will just be a very simple lifeline, if you want. So as we can see, I usually also provide them with some images for inspiration or just some sort of triggering, if you want. Art is about the body, or most art is about the body. And of course, that if I show them the Frida Kahlo painting, they will immediately be taken aback because they will think, oh, I can't draw that like that. But that's not the point of it. The point of it is to actually think of the body as the site of human experience and the somatic experience of life in general. And finally, some images of body maps. This is taken from Carol Devine's article. And as you can see, these are life size, so they are actually very big, and they took several weeks to be completed. And as you can see, they are very different in style. They are very different in aesthetically as well. I always find very interesting how women depict their pregnancies, for instance. And as you can see at the bottom, there are all these references to traveling, for instance, from Zimbabwe to Canada, and they actually become very personal accounts of what these women have lived through. But at the same time, they will always be personal in the sense that, for instance, we can or cannot recognize these symbols here. So they may not make sense to the person from who's outside looking at these maps, but they will definitely make sense for those who are writing them. And I find them actually very, very beautiful and very complex. And they'll have all these details. They tell us a lot about the person, but also the main point of the body map is to tell the person who she is. So it's a very introspective process as well. And this is also an example of instructions that can be given to students or to participants of body mapping workshops. And they are adaptable, and they're always being adapted. But no one begins a body map without any type of instructions. It's not out of the blue. And that's why it works so well, because we need some instructions. If I ask them to draw their life, they will just look at me and wonder, how and why. But we have to give them some sort of instructions. And these are the instructions. And that's my last slide as well. So the idea is that you think of the body position that best represents you. Then we start with the feet. So the feet represents the roots, where we come from, like a home, a country, a family, a culture. It represents the beginnings of that person. Then we move into the head. The head represents dreams, goals, and aspirations, what you want to achieve, who you want to be, where you want to go. And it's the future. And it's very interesting to see how students sometimes just put everything on their heads. So they think they're always trying to anticipate the future. And it's probably much easier for them to ask where they want to go than where they come from. And then between the feet and the head, between the past and present, this is what they this is their journey, if we want. So it's a personal journey that is unique to them, and they have to think about what happened along the way. So pets, families, hobbies, communities, personal slogans, symbols, words that describe them, and then they can fill the rest of the body with marks, names, things that are present or missing, places of pain, places of joy. So, and then they just get uh, excited about it, and they just will just draw and include things that are extremely personal, but also um, there's always something that tells you a lot about someone when you look at their body maps. Even the colors they use. I remember students who are very shy and would just like draw with yellow, so it would barely be visible on the page, which was very interesting. So by looking at the body map, we can understand a lot about our students, but most of them, they understand a lot about themselves. And I find that in today's world where we are extremely isolated, extremely nervous and anxious, and always worried about the future, body mapping can be a very productive tool to relax, sit down, return to leave the digital behind a little bit and return to physical materials and to look inwards rather than outwards. So that's what I had to share today, and I hope that it made sense to you in a way.
Thank you very much, Hannah. It was very interesting. And actually, like the link that this tool can make between the body and the mind is very interesting.
Mhm.
And I think the introspection, as you were saying, like we are quite far from our bodies now. We are
Mhm.
just like in a world which go very fast in all the
Yeah.
aspects, and we are very like connected with digital things. So yeah, that's that. I love the fact that this kind of activity of tool can help just to settle more
Mhm.
and analyze and have an introspection actually.
Yeah.
I have there is no question for the moment, but we have a small delay maybe. I have a question for how long have you been doing that in your classroom, the body mapping?
Yeah. I started. I did some workshops 4 or 5 years ago,
Okay.
and usually I actually do it as workshops. So students will organize events, and they will invite me, and I will do the workshop. So it has been. I use it as part of the classroom, but actually it's more used with outside the classroom as a workshop that they attend willingly. And I've also used it. I never take photos of the things I do. I'm a very bad academic in that sense. I never take photos. And I actually just thought about it because at this university in particular, high school students are invited to come here for a week and just experience university to see if they would like to come here. And I actually use it with high school students as well. And it was very productive. And I was asked to do it again. And I'm doing it late in December too. So I've been doing it for some time now. Yeah.
And do you also use it with your because like you were mentioning there are international students and
Mhm.
like their way they are thinking is a bit different because they have
Yeah.
like they have taken into account their culture and the fact that they travel and so on and so forth. What about your students in Portugal? Are you also doing that with them? Do they have
Mhm.
the same how can I say that use of the body map?
Yeah, it's
Or is it more
different.
complicated maybe?
It's very different. It's very different in the sense that the result will be different. They don't have all that baggage, right?
Mhm.
They don't have. I mean, actually, we do have a lot of students now who actually have histories of migration, but instead of writing about that because they don't have that, they probably will give more importance to other things, and they will put other things in their body map. And what I like about body mapping is that every single experience is valid. So if, of course, that the reality of a student who is a refugee will be much different from the one of a local student that has never left their country. But both of them, what I think that I'm trying to say is that both of them will draw something on a map, and they will give, uh, they will value things differently, or that will have a bigger implication to them. I would say. So instead of just writing about migration, they would write about their home or write about their family or their pets too. Um, so yeah, they react differently, definitely.
Yes, and I was wondering if you had a case with that may be very destabilizing for the students, like
Mm-hmm.
because the introspection can be sometimes difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Did you experiment situations like that, where at the end of the body mapping, or maybe some students have to stop in the middle because it's quite complicated? I wonder how you can handle that, because it I guess it may happen during the workshop.
Yeah, I think that I'm always aware that I'm not a therapist in any way, so I don't want them to trigger very harmful feelings. So I never actually experienced anything like that. I experienced something with someone who actually had like sort of a cathartic moment, in the sense that this person in particular was able to to talk about things afterwards. She wanted to discuss the map with me, and she was able to talk about things, and she was actually surprised by her own ability to talk about them. But usually we try not to. We try to avoid the triggers, because I'm not a therapist. I'm very much aware that this can become a very dangerous, you know, terrain, and I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. So I always tell them, go as far as you can, go as deep as you want, because at the end of the day, it's just a workshop, right? And they are in a controlled environment, and they are able to, if they want to, just go into a corner and draw. That's fine. And some of them may not even want to draw, and they can just leave. So it's up to the participant to decide what they want it to be. Um, so I haven't yet met anyone who was very disturbed by it. I hope I don't, because then I would not know how to react. But yeah, some people will refuse to do it because they are aware that it will trigger things. So they just refuse, which is completely fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be a first step for them anyway to go further if they want to later on
Yeah,
with.
yeah, absolutely.
And I was wondering also, and yeah, we still have a bit of time, like their feedback at the end, because you have the workshop. It's just one workshop during
Mhm.
the year.
Yeah.
Um, what is the feedback you received? I guess it was, like, from what you said, quite positive
Mhm.
of the students.
Yeah, yeah, they actually really liked it. There's always this, the first 20 minutes are hard, because they start drawing the body, and then they can't draw the body, and they want it to be very perfect and beautiful, and then they go online and look for a body, but that's not their body. So I'm like, you know, you don't look like an actor. Just draw your body, or draw very simple. And then they actually always go over time, and they have a lot of fun. And also because they are in a different context. So I asked them to think about the university life, for instance. What has happened in your university life? Instead of just going into their childhood, which can be traumatic, for instance. So they start having fun as well with each other, and they talk a lot to each other. And I think that as soon as you bring paper and pencil into a classroom, everything changes. They react very nicely, and they start drawing right away, and then they say that they haven't drawn for 10 or 15 years. So I think that it's nice all around, actually. I never had someone saying that they had had a bad experience.
Okay, that's great. And my last question would
Yeah,
be,
yes,
because
please, thank you.
you showed a map with the different piece of like a part of the world where some
Mhm,
articles were published about body
mhm,
mapping. So it's just like the countries you could identify that used this tool in
mhm.
different contexts.
Yep.
So yeah, because you said it was created in 2002.
Mhm,
So yeah, so like you don't know if it's used in other contexts, maybe where there is no article published, or
Yeah,
if it's
yeah, absolutely. That map was actually published in 2012, and so it's probably a bit outdated by now. But of course, that people have been using this even in uh, in a doctor's appointment to show where it hurts or something like that. There was actually at the workshop last week, there was a student who said, "Oh, I've done this. I just didn't know the name." And also, we've been obsessed with the body and art since since the first handprint in a cave somewhere. So this is the recording of the academic research on body mapping. So people are actually putting out books and articles on body mapping, like the theory of body mapping. But it's probably been used by many people. I know of, for instance, in some workshops, some people actually older, so in their 50s and 60s, they actually said that they would start like journaling every day and doing a body map every day. And I think that we've been doing it. It's just not uh, the focus of academic research. But there's a book now, and it clearly has been gaining some relevance in an academic environment too. Yeah.
all right. Thank you very much for this
Thank you.
very interesting topic. It was a
Cheers.
pleasure to host this talk today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise, and thank you everyone for attending and for watching this webinar. We will have our next webinar within a couple of days, so I invite you just to have a look, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you for the questions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.